Right. I still remember when I first shot in the St. Louis Business Patch. We were at the paper. Right. It was this closet-sized office that was his. And he would be covering a scene, and he would show up, and he'd be like, Dave, what's going on? And he would like walk to the tape, and walk to the tape, he would walk up to the concert, he would come back, and he would tell you everything that was going on. Like, the life. So much heard what really is straight out. We get that.
Yeah, I was greater than a year, but I was like, you know what? I can go over here by myself in a 5-9 shirt. Let's put a 9 or 10 hour beer from the sketch. Well, that was $7.
Yeah, we spent that.
And then I can go home and I have their beer. I literally played before. Now where I have to go, or just this thing. Right.
That's what she does. I told her to pull her hands so we could tell. That's how they call it. Stop. Try to figure out the microphone machine. There's just a YouTube video of how to use it. Like, you know, she's done it. Oh, God.
So gorgeous. Her hands still in the middle because the crate is automatic. I just heard the kid with the draft. I assume you referred to some stock photos.
We're referring to tragic ways to die at the fair.
Poor dog sticking the
Falling off.
He's trying to hold on to 200 hours.
It's so fast. It's so nice. Like,
God, we're so
that's what she's talking about. So I was Anthony, that's right up there with your story.
Oh, man.
I think it's better. Yeah, maybe it'll suffer a while longer. At least the bear didn't die. And the horse didn't die.
Just the kid.
about
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacob Frey. I'm the mayor of Minneapolis, and before we begin, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to have the incredible leaders, mayors, and community advocates behind me to introduce themselves so you understand where this message is coming from. Again, I'm Jacob Frey, mayor of Minneapolis.
Melvin Carter, mayor of the city of St. Paul, Minnesota.
Tim Bussey, mayor of Bloomington, Minnesota.
Ted Kozlowski, mayor of Stillwater.
Mike Kratchmer, mayor of Vadnais Heights, Minnesota.
Brad Wiersa, mayor of Minnetonka.
Patrick Hanlon, mayor of Hopkins, Minnesota.
Mary Supple, mayor of Ridgefield.
Amanda Marcus Simula, mayor of City of Columbia Heights.
Rachel James, City of Columbia Heights Council President.
Kathleen Anderson, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America.
And thank you so much for being here. In the horrific aftermath of the shooting at Annunciation, we saw heroes step up. Faculty and teachers were throwing their bodies on the line to make sure that students were safe. Police officers were running into a church not knowing what was behind the next door, and there is no doubt in my mind that because of their heroic efforts, lives were saved. Community members have been answering the call to see the kind of necessary change that we all need. And mayors behind me, we all feel the responsibility every single day. We are the executives that are closest to people. And every single day, every morning, when we walk out on the sidewalk, there is not a second that goes by that we don't feel the gravity of the situation and the weight of one simple obligation, which is keeping the people of our respective cities safe. And so there are so many heroes that have stepped up, from police officers to faculty, from teachers to church members. And they are heroes. It is now time for elected officials to step up as well. It's important that Minnesota makes the kind of progress on gun reform that we need to see in our cities. The asks that we have, they're not outlandish. They're not radical. The asks that we have are supported by around 67% of people throughout America, and even about half of the Republican Party. These are asks that are basic and that stem not out of hate, not out of politics. These are asks that stem from a love for our children. And right now, as we are wrapping our arms around the families that have suffered so much grief, right now, as we're doing everything possible to help them, to protect them, we also have an obligation to say never again. We don't want to be the next mayor to say this should never happen in our city. One of the most shocking things is the number of mayors from around the country that have texted me that have themselves been involved in some form of school or church shooting. That in and of itself is horrific. The answers, the solutions, they're not new. They're very clear. They've been the same answers that have been around for the last 3 years, 5 years, 25 years. We were talking about some of these same solutions when I was in high school. And we have the ability now to make the kind of change that will protect families and keep kids safe going into the future. And so what are we asking for? As mayors and as community members, we are asking for a statewide and a federal ban on assault weapons. The day after the horrific shooting, there were a number of important elected officials, including many members of our Democratic caucus, that joined us in the rotunda. They are on board. They are ready for the kind of change that we need to see. Second, we're asking for a ban on high-capacity magazines. What we mean there is that you shouldn't have the ability to reel off 30 shots before you need to reload. Assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, these are devices that were quite literally built and designed to kill people. Not built and designed to hunt deer, built and designed to pierce body armor, pierce somebody's flesh, and take down a whole bunch of people all at once. There is no reason to have these kind of machinery in our cities. And finally, if state and federal officials are either unwilling or unable to make the necessary change, give us, as mayors of these cities, the ability to do it ourselves. Right now, we are preempted from virtually any kind of gun reform in municipalities, but we are impacted by it. We get the calls from police chiefs at 1 in the morning about a kid that was gunned down. We've experienced, tragically, school and church shootings. We see the aftermath and how communities are broken apart by gun violence. We have the ability to change, and so give us the authority to do it. Change the law that preempts cities from acting if you are not able to do it yourselves. The first choice, of course, the first and best way of doing this is to have a statewide and/or a federal ban on assault weapons and a ban on high-capacity magazines. But if you're not able to do it or willing to do it there, give us the ability to keep our constituents safe. That is our call. That is our ask. I know the Minneapolis delegation and well beyond is ready to act. I know Governor Walz, who is ready to sign on a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines if the legislature sends it to his desk. There is no greater obligation as government officials to keep our kids safe. And I know that we're poised to do that if we do the right thing. Next, I would like to introduce Mayor Melvin Carter, who has been a partner in this progress from day one, a very good friend, and the great mayor of the great city of St. Paul.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's an honor to stand beside all of the mayors who are here today. It's always an honor to stand beside Moms Demand Action, the work that you all do for gun sense in America, for gun sense in Minnesota, and certainly for gun sense in every city, but specifically including St. Paul, we cherish, and the progress that we've been able to make is largely due to the moms, to the dads, to the students, to the community members who make it clear day in and day out that we demand action in Minnesota. I'm proud to be the mayor of a city that takes action on gun violence. I'm proud to be the mayor of a city that partnered with Moms Demand Action to create a safe storage law. I'm proud to be the mayor of a city that decided a couple of years ago that we were going to boost our investments, in particular in non-fatal shootings, and have tripled our solve rate for non-fatal shootings and seeing gunfire drop precipitously as a result of that. I'm proud of all of the work that we're doing on the local level. As horrifying as the experience we all went through last week, it also is a source of pride to know that we have first responders, that we have EMTs, that we have teachers and parents and community members and pastors and priests and elders and imams who will do whatever it takes to keep our children safe, to rally together as community members. That's what we do when there's an emergency. Everybody jumps in and does their part. That's what we saw in Minneapolis last week. That's what we see in St. Paul. That's what we see in all of these communities with all of these mayors that are gathered here together literally every single day. But let me tell you, the emergency did not start when that cowardly individual chose to point an assault rifle at children and pull the trigger. The emergency did not start when those two beautiful children, Minnesotan children, took their last breath. The emergency started when we found out that we live in a country in which the #1 cause of death for children is gunfire. All of that work that we do in St. Paul, all of that work that those first responders do, all of that work that our police officers and firefighters and paramedics do is limited by a national and statewide policy environment that enables people to have the type of firearms that wreaked that damage in Minneapolis that last week. Our request, as Mayor Frey said, agrees with the vast majority of Minnesotans. It agrees with common sense, and it's important to note it agrees with our law enforcement community. That if you want to fire 100 rounds in a matter of a couple of seconds, go join the Army. We don't have a need for those types of firearms, for those types of weapons in our community. We are asking for weapons that are designed and manufactured to be instruments of death, to be used against people. Those high-capacity weapons that are designed as assault rifles, to be banned in our state. We are asking for any device that's manufactured specifically for the purpose of turning a regular firearm into a high-capacity assault weapon to be banned in our state. We don't need them in our schools. We don't need them in our rec centers. We don't need them in our neighborhoods. We don't need them on our streets. We don't need them in our communities. Today is the first day of school in St. Paul. It's an exciting and joyful day. I got a chance this morning to talk to kindergartners, to fist bump rising seniors, and to tell sixth graders how excited I was to be a sixth grader when I was in their shoes. And Mayor Frey also got a chance to talk to parents whose excitement for the moment, whose pride for their students, whose joy at jumping into another school year is also seasoned by the taste of grief, by the taste of trauma, by the taste of loss that we all feel so profoundly in our community right now. Those students, those children saw an emergency and they took action. Those teachers saw an emergency and they took action. Those clergy members saw an emergency and they took action. The police officers, the firefighters, the paramedics, the first responders saw an emergency and took action. We have an emergency, and we are simply asking our legislature to do what every 8-year-old in that school knew to do last week. Take action. With that, I'd love to introduce Bloomington Mayor Tim Bussey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Bussey. I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the mayor of the city of Bloomington. Proud to stand here with my fellow mayors and with community members, but I'm heartbroken that we're here after yet another horrific act of violence here in the Twin Cities. Folks, I'm old enough to remember when this country literally went to war over an incorrectly perceived threat of weapons of mass destruction. Now we have an immediate threat, a very local threat, from devastating weapons right here in our schools, our churches, our communities, and our neighborhoods. Weapons of war are in the hands of people who should never, ever have the opportunity to use them, and our communities are paying the price. Since last Wednesday's shooting at Annunciation Church, we've seen the unwavering resolve of Minnesotans who are demanding change. Inaction is no longer an option. And if our state and federal leaders can't match the urgency and the determination of the people that they represent, then it's time to give cities the tools and the authority to use those tools. Give the cities the opportunity to lead, because cities have a long history of leading, stepping up when higher levels of government have stalled. Whether it's a housing, indoor smoking bans, earned sick and safe leave, child care, it was cities that led, and eventually the state followed. Because cities know how to get things done.
That's right.
We're the closest to the people, we feel the impact, and we shoulder the responsibility. Gun violence doesn't respect city boundaries. This isn't a big city problem, this isn't a first-ring suburb problem, this is a Minnesota problem. From Bloomington to Burnsville, from Cold Spring to Buffalo to Red Lake, our communities are hurting. And it's our first responders and our local law enforcement who are on the front line. I just want to express my deepest gratitude to the brave men and women who responded to last week's tragedy, including our police officers from Bloomington who responded. They didn't hesitate. They ran toward danger. They deserve our respect, they deserve our support, and they deserve action. They should not be outgunned. They deserve a seat at the table to prevent these tragedies before they happen. We've heard from many voices a call for better mental health resources. I absolutely couldn't agree more. That's why the Bloomington Police Department has launched a mental health rapid response pilot program, providing in-home counseling and therapy in the midst of a crisis. We've embedded social workers in our department, and we're working with St. Mary's University on community brain health. Bloomington Public Health is tackling loneliness and isolation through their Start With High program, helping people reconnect and heal. But these programs are working. They're replicable. Other cities could do them as well. But it takes resources. It takes funding and commitment. And here's the hard truth, folks. Many, if not all, of the same voices who are now talking about mental health investment were absolutely silent when the Trump administration eliminated a $1 billion school mental health grant and proposed slashing funding to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration by another $1.1 billion. If you truly believe that mental health is part of the solution here, if you're not just swapping out thoughts and prayers for mental health solutions, it's time to speak up. And it's time to step up. It's time to fight for the resources that our communities need to be safe. Cities are ready to lead, but we cannot do it alone. We need state and federal partners who understand that community safety is not a partisan issue. It's not about scoring political points. It's about saving lives. Let's all act. Let's act together before we're standing here again. With that, I'd like to introduce Kathleen Anderson from Moms Demand Action.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kathleen Anderson. I live in St. Paul, and I am one of the state chapter leaders for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I'm also a clinical social worker. In my work, I've sat across from children and families whose lives have been upended by the trauma of gun violence. I know how deep these wounds go. Children who can't sleep through the night, parents who carry unbearable grief, and communities that struggle to heal long after the headlines fade. What happened at Annunciation Catholic School last week is so devastating. 2 children, just 8 and 10 years old, were shot and killed in a place that should have been their sanctuary. A third is fighting for her life right now in the ICU. Their classmates and their teachers will carry wounds and the memory of that day forever, and their families will live with grief that no parent should ever endure. We know the common thread in these tragedies are assault weapons. These are weapons of war designed to kill as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. They fire round after round in seconds, leaving children, teachers, and police officers alike with no chance to escape. When these guns are used, the devastation is not just worse, it is catastrophic. That's why Governor Walz must call a special session now, and why lawmakers must pass an assault weapons ban. We cannot wait until 2026. Every day without action is another day when a weapon of war could be carried into a classroom, a church, or a city street. When the federal government banned these guns, it worked. States that have assault weapons bans see fewer mass shootings. The evidence is clear that banning assault weapons saves lives. I also want to thank the mayors, all gathered here today, for gathering and calling for action, because mayors see the reality up close. What happens when assault-style weapons flood our streets, when families bury their children, when city resources are stretched to respond to crisis after crisis. Because here's the truth. Minnesotans' preemption laws tie our mayor's hands. We faced this head-on 2 years ago when we worked with the St. Paul City Council and the mayor's office to pass our secure storage ordinance. Even if these mayors wanted to pass local laws to ban assault weapons in their cities or to keep guns out of schools, parks, libraries, or rec centers, they can't. The state law says no, and that is unacceptable. If the legislature fails to ban assault weapons, local leaders must have the authority to protect their own communities. Repealing preemption is not just good policy, it's a lifeline. Our cities deserve the power to do what the state won't. And as a neighbor to the Capitol, I live just 8 minutes away. I'm here all of the time during sessions, and I hear elected leaders on the other side say, well, these policies just don't work for my constituents. The persistent threat of gun violence is not working for the children in my home, for the neighbors on my block, for the kids in my community, and all of the communities of the mayors standing behind me. We cannot accept a future where our children practice lockdown drills instead of spelling words, where parents live in fear of the next call from school, where communities are forever scarred by preventable tragedies. Governor Walz must call a special session. Lawmakers must ban assault weapons, and if they refuse, they must at least give our mayors and city councils the power to step up and do it themselves. Our kids deserve to come home at the end of the day. They deserve to grow up safe, and it is our responsibility to make sure they do so. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
I'll open it to questions, but before we get to the first one, I just want to know, we've got mayors up here from Minnetonka to Stillwater, and of the number of mayors throughout the state that are on board with this strategy here.
Sounds like you're skeptical that perhaps the divided legislature will be able to actually pass an assault weapons ban when they go to special session potentially at the end of this month. What makes you think there'd be any appetite for them to also repeal that law from the 80s of preemption?
Look, I'm not naive to the political dynamics that take place at the Capitol, and I don't pretend to understand all of the machinations that could potentially take place as part of a special session. We need the question called. Let's have the debate. Let's have the argument. Let's move forward and take the vote, because that is what our constituents are demanding, and this is not about politics for us. This is not about politics for the mayors that are on the front lines, the teachers that have experienced so much grief, the students that need to be able to go into school and learn math and play on a playground and mess around in a cafeteria without the concern of getting shot. That is one of the most obvious things that I could possibly say. Again, I don't pretend to understand all of the politics that goes into this, but what I do know is that we need to act. What I do know is these are not radical or bizarre asks. This is common sense. For those that say we need common sense in politics, this is a great opportunity to make sure that that mentality is applied in legislation.
Let me add that.
Please.
I'd also say, and to your point of the complexities of everything that happens or doesn't happen in this building, I always tell folks that our job as mayors is to deal with the challenges that end up too hard for our federal government or our state government to address. We end up addressing those things on the front line. I think one of our goals in saying either pass a ban or move out of the way and give us the opportunity in our own communities is to offer a menu of options to say if you're not capable of passing a ban yourself, then give us the opportunity to let local voters, local communities decide. And you know, frankly, I'll add a third, is that if even that feels like a stretch too far, for those legislators who may feel like this doesn't work for their constituents, we'll give your constituents the opportunity to decide for themselves through a statewide vote. Let's call the question. Let's put the question on the ballot. And part of my hope is that as we have this conversation, as we start this major statewide conversation, that those folks who live in some of those districts who are constituents, who say, like you just said, access to personal weapons of mass destruction doesn't work for my family, doesn't work for our children, doesn't work for our community. We ought to make sure they get a chance to stand up and say that themselves, to make sure that any legislature in any part of this state gets a chance to hear from their own constituents who need us to do something different in Minnesota.
Mayor, are you saying that you want to do a statewide constitutional amendment vote, or you're saying that cities should be able to do local referenda? When you said put the question to voters.
Again, I will say that I'll reiterate that I don't understand all the politics that occurs in this building, so I don't have the specifics where that's concerned. What I am suggesting is that it's not time to do nothing.
How many of the mayors here have stores that sell guns in their city? Are there, I'm just trying to get a count here, does anybody here have stores?
Well, I know there's one in my city.
And I'm sorry, you're with?
Minnetonka, there's a gun store in Minnetonka.
Okay. Is there any concern that, banning at the state level, you can still cross to a different municipality and still pick up an assault weapon? I mean,
That, I would say, excuse me,
Please
I
go
would
for
say,
it,
that's always a concern, but doing nothing is a bigger concern. The fewer, I'm a marketer by training, and if there's one thing I've learned is increased access equals increased consumption. So if you take away opportunities to get guns, there will be fewer guns used. Does it solve the problem? It does not. But does it reduce the problem? Does it mitigate the problem? Yes, it does. So while, let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good.
I have a question about the practical aspects of this. If one city bans assault weapons and the neighboring city doesn't ban it, does that mean if you carry your weapon over the city line, that would be against the law?
Yes.
Okay. And then what do you do about all of the assault weapons that are currently in people's homes? And we have no idea how many assault weapons are in Minnesota homes legally right now. What do you do with that?
Again, and please weigh in, but I think that you're right. Banning assault weapons going forward is not going to solve the problem. What we're trying to do is make improvements to reduce the magnitude of the problem. Over time, those assault weapons hopefully will go away. But yeah, we're not going to go into people's homes and take assault weapons away, in my view, but we're going to ban the future sale and start mitigating the problem because we do not allow the sale of assault weapons in our cities.
Is that what you're talking about? You're saying, is that what you're talking about with your?
So we have had bans on assault weapons nationally before. That ban then expired. And so this is not, it's not as if this is some unique thing that has never been tried. Other countries have had mass shootings. And then rather than sit on their hands, they have made the move to ban assault weapons so that that kind of thing doesn't happen again. The only difference is we haven't made that move in decades. And so we're in the position to do it now. Are there logistics that need to be worked out just like any piece of legislation? Of course there are. Of course there are. But we got to have the argument, we got to take the necessary steps, and we're in the position now to act.
Can you be more specific about, assault weapon is a fairly arbitrary term that would need to be defined. You're talking about banning certain models, certain assaultive features. Speak to how you're defining assault weapons.
Right. Generally speaking, we're talking about guns and devices that are built to be assault weapons and or devices that are built to shift non-assault weapons to be able to reel off a whole bunch of bullets all at once. And we've seen both of those in our city. We have seen the ability to simply attach a device to a non-assault weapon and suddenly it is made into one that can reel off 30 rounds. We're trying to prevent both of those things from happening.
So some models and also certain assaultive features.
That's correct.
Is there a state that a number of states have some sort of restriction or ban? Is there a state that you think Minnesota or maybe Moms-Demand has thought of this, like should model it after? Because they do, the definitions vary.
Yes.
And what's actually?
The definitions do vary. For purposes of what we're asking for today, there are, I believe, 8 states that have allowed for municipalities and cities to act. So again, we are saying the best scenario here is obviously a national ban. The next best scenario is a statewide ban. But if you're either unwilling or unable to act at those levels of government, give us the ability to take the steps to keep our children safe.
Are any of you represented in the legislature by Republicans? And if so, have you talked to them? Or, I mean, because it seems like that's where the pressure needs to be applied. Anybody?
We're all looking at you, man.
I mean, we have a Democrat in the state legislature and a Republican.
Go for it, please.
Sorry. We're fortunate in Stillwater to be represented by a Democrat in the House and a state Republican in our state Senate. At this point, I haven't had a chance to talk with either of them about this initiative or even about the tragedy that happened last week, but I look forward to doing so.
Yeah, and just to be very clear again, and thank you, Mayor, we're not talking about your father's hunting rifle. We're not talking about shooting ducks and deer. We're talking about having the ability to reel off 30 rounds before you need to reload. I'm not a hunter, and I acknowledge that, but I doubt that as a hunter, that's how you do it.
Sir, do you talk
Am I right?
about what the magazine capacity limit should be? You said 30 rounds. I mean,
High-capacity magazines, I believe, is defined as 10 and above, but you should probably check my fact.
I have a question that's kind of in the weeds about preemption. Mayor Carter, maybe, I remember when we covered the safe storage initiative, one of the ways we did that legally was that it had to do with amending code that you could control around discharge of weapons. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
And then, I know the gun owners probably said they were gonna sue, and I don't think they did, if it was enforced, but like, is there anything that any mayors are looking at in terms of things you may be able to do on a regulating discharge of certain weapons, or is there a lot of gray area there legally?
Oh, those are questions that we're really interested in. It's a conversation I had with our city council president, honestly, just this morning. And you're right, our safe storage law that, folks said, this is going to be unconstitutional. And, they decided not to sue for themselves, despite all of that saber rattling. What we determined was that we were operating in a space that specifically was not preempted. We weren't actually governing how you carry a firearm. We were governing how you store it when you're not carrying a firearm. And like you said, governing discharge of a firearm. Obviously, discharge is too late, right? That we need solutions that are far upstream. And this is what you're hearing from the mayors here. We spend an enormous amount of time trying to sort of hack the problem that in Minnesota, you can go and get a high-capacity rifle that can fire off dozens of rounds in a matter of seconds in a scenario in which there's absolutely no way for people to have time to just take cover or hide, let alone defend themselves. And that is the challenge that we're trying to face. I'm sure I speak for all of us when we say we certainly are looking for spaces that give us opportunities to act in the midst of in the context of the state the state legislative environment that we're in. However, all of those things are just trying to figure out how to navigate what the real problem is. And so much of that real challenge, so much of that real problem can be solved by saying we just don't allow the sale of high-capacity assault weapons in this state. Again, our ask, and there are lots of details. There are lots of details to be worked out. And we mayors, our police chiefs, our police officers, our first responders, stand ready to work directly with any legislator in this building who's ready for a real conversation about how we protect our children and our families. Our demand is, don't do nothing.
One more question.
2012, and our gun laws in this country have fairly changed since then. Why should this one be any different?
That's the question.
That is the question.
That's the question.
I think there's more than a few people that would say, why try, just throw up your hands, it's not worth it. Think about your children. I think about my little girls. I think about every morning getting them up, trying to get on Frida's shoes, handing her a thing of applesauce. It's these little annoyances that in the moment are frustrating. But this is what I love about being a dad, and we should think about these kids not as somebody else's, but as our own. We have the ability to do something now. The ask is very straightforward. And even in the last 7 years, since we took office as mayors, I'll tell you, things have changed. Not for the better. When I used to get a call from the chief late at night or get briefed early in the morning, one of the questions I would ask is, how many shots fired? I don't ask that question anymore. Why? Because the dynamic has changed, whereas before it was just a few shots over the period of a minute. Now, based on the ability to attach a clip, it's a spray of bullets. That spray hits more people. That spray divides more families. That spray, just by simple math, this is math, makes our cities more dangerous, and we have the ability to make them more safe by preventing that spray from happening. This is as basic as it gets. This is math. And we can prevent these kinds of deaths in large numbers. Obviously, we need to work on mental health. Yes, of course, we support prayer and thoughts. And we support action.
Mayor Kozlowski.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just one more. That question, or that conversation you're gonna have with Senator Housley, that seems like the most important conversation you're gonna have. I don't haven't had it yet. How are you gonna approach it? How are you gonna try to convince this person that, hey, action is needed in this moment?
I'm really, Karen has always been, Senator Housley has always been wonderful to work with and a big help for the city of Stillwater. So I'm confident we can have a good, productive conversation. I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that she can be a leader on her side of the aisle with this. She's very effective at her job, and she's a parent. I think she'll understand. I think it'll be a good conversation.
Thank you. We have Tom's folks in here if you have any more questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Nice job.
Yeah.